Hey! Before we get into the meat and bones and videos and releases of this month, I wanted to do a little bit of a catch-up series talking about some of my favorite and the best metal albums of the prior month, both in the underground and the mainstream. And as usual, if any of these releases pique your interest and you want to check them out for yourselves, they will be down in the description box below with relevant links to check out as well as places to listen to them. Definitely support all of these bands, and also, what were your favorite releases of the last month? I can't wait to hear it. Let me know down in the comment section below, but without further ado, let's get into it. First off, I want to give a shout out to the Avatar record, Dance Devil Dance. For me, personally, I know a lot of people were high on their last few records, but this is substantially better for me than their last two releases. Very balanced mix, slicing solos, and a crisp bass work that just makes me twitch, like in the positive way. The grooves are on point, the vocals just soar on every single track here. They're very much still worshipping at the altar of classic progressive metal and progressive rock and heavy metal with enough of that melodic death metal edge to keep you hooked. It's catchy as hell, but it doesn't compromise its heaviness, and it doesn't feel too cleanly produced or sanitized to where it saps the life out of it. Definitely check it out if you're interested. Next up, I want to shout out the Hellripper record entitled Warlocks, Grim, and Withered Hags, which right off the bat is probably one of my favorite album titles I've heard in recent memory. Hellripper's an interesting project because it's a project that I don't necessarily keep my eye on that much, and then they'll bust in with a release and I'll quickly remember that they exist and I will consume the hell out of it and love it and then forget about them. But this record, I think, has more of a chance to leave a lasting impact on the listener. The Scottish musician James McBain is the solo contributor to Hellripper as a project, and this is one of the best black and thrash releases that I've heard in a while, and also just one of the best black and thrash projects I've heard in a while. Because boy, this thing just rips up and it takes no prisoners. It is relentless, and honestly, the production just does it so many favors. High tempo, throttling thrash metal riffs with the gargly, throaty, shrieked black metal vocals. It's surprisingly dynamic and surprisingly diverse from this genre, which is notorious for sort of playing it safe and being too familiar. And it also has that hellish and demented evil quality of how a lot of heavy metal came across in the 70s and the 80s. Next up, I want to shout out the new Vandal record, Jigokuhen. I like to keep track of multiple YouTube channels and publications that put different underground releases on my radar. Black Metal Promotion is always one of the most consistent sources for really great atmospheric black metal. This is a Japanese black metal project that has been taking me by storm, and when I first laid my ears on this record, the only thing I could think is, why is this not getting more attention? It's tight, it's very meticulous, and if you are stepping into this thinking that you are just going to get another dime a dozen blast beat wank fest, you are sorely mistaken. There is a crushing atmosphere and a building tension on every single track here. It's so cold. It reminds me a lot of what Portal does with their musical compositions, where every inch of the composition is used, every corner is used. There's no space left in a composition because everything is just compressed so heavily and claustrophobically pounded down to create such a swelling atmosphere and tension to every riff that plays out, making the drums sound gargantuan and just giving you that asphyxiating feeling that the best atmospheric black metal bands can do. But it doesn't really care that much about being too clean or too pretty because it's just so hellish. It simultaneously sounds so huge on the production side of things, but makes you feel claustrophobic. It flows together very nicely. It's like one unit. It's a super cohesive listen, and a relatively short record as well, so it gets in and out before it really can become too cumbersome or wear its ideas too thin. Next up, I want to shout out the Inflames record, Foregone. I'll be the first to say that this is not going to reinvent the wheel or make anyone a believer if you aren't into melodic death metal, and especially if you're not into Inflames. It is a no bullshit old school melodic death metal record that pulls no punches, and it just scratches a certain itch. Grooves, catchiness, catchy riffs, catchy production. Inflames, I would say, are like a well-oiled machine at this point. I will say it's a bit long, and being near 50 minutes doesn't necessarily do it any favors, but what I will say on that front is what it lacks in originality, it makes up for in consistency and good chemistry and good songwriting. Because at the end of the day, even if you're doing something that you've done before, if you are writing it with proficiency and are efficient at your craft, and like I said, are in well-oiled machine, it's probably going to come out the other side sounding pretty good, regardless of what your standards are. From the macabre opener or the almost metalcore tinged chorus on Meet Your Maker, it's just lovely. It does have its moments where it's dynamic, but for the most part, it's just a consistent melodic death metal, Swedish death metal record. Next up, I want to shout out the Street Tunes record, Reclusive, Decay. This thing has grip, this thing has spit. This is the debut from this 4-piece Santa Fe band, and it can be found now on Carbonized Records. It may not be doing anything to sort of innovate the genre necessarily, but as someone that hears a lot of OSDM worship from a lot of labels and bands, and it just sounds like wallpaper most notably, this is one of the more well put together albums, let alone debuts, that I've heard in recent memory, and is a band that I think would be worth keeping your eye on and checking out and supporting. If you're a fan of blood incantation minus the sci-fi aesthetic, and specifically I would say if you're a fan of a band like Gravesend, or just overall the New York style of underground death metal, that is the type of vein that this is in. Next up, I want to shout out Omega Infinity with the record The Anticurrent. This is likely my favorite, but I know for a fact it won't be everyone's. I covered these guys back in 2020, I believe, with their debut Solar Spectre, and boy have they found a way to turn up the experimentation, and it's almost like a completely different band at this point. They were like an Odyssey-like, scientific, galactic black metal band, and it was something that we've heard before, but I thought it was done in a pretty creative way, and I came out of that record feeling very positive about it. And once again, another galactic-themed black metal record, but the noise and the ambience of this record is as complex and delicate as it is difficult to decipher. It's so faded out, it's so slathered in effects, it is so blown out that it very much lives up to its concept of the birth of the universe, whereas they've been exploring the universe in the past, they just said, well, let's fucking create the universe, why not? If you want something that is going to be a unique experience that you're probably not going to be able to replicate this year from another band, this would be a record to check out. Strapped to the teeth with these discordant and despondent piano chords and these non-stop frantic blast beats and riffs and vocals that just consume and swallow the mix like you're in the belly of this omnipotent, all-seeing being. If you like your music avant-garde, don't miss out on this album. And that wraps up the best metal albums and my favorites from last month. Definitely let me know what yours are down in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. Maybe something slipped through the cracks for me. I can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off.